Before we start, if you enjoy the story, please leave a like and check if you're subscribed. The iron taste of blood filled Jake Hawthorne's mouth as he slammed into the arena floor. Above him, the creature that had put him there, something with too many joints and serrated bone protrusions where its skin should be, circled for another pass. The crowd's roar washed over him in waves, a cacophony of alien shrieks and chittering that made his ears ring. He'd woken in the cage 3 hours ago. No explanation, no trial, just the electric prod and the gate opening into this pit. Jake rolled left as the creature dove. Claws raked stone where his head had been. He came up fast, drove his elbow into what he hoped was a kidney analog. The thing shrieked and stumbled. Jake followed through with the knee to its segmented throat. It went down hard. The crowd's volume doubled. Jake stood over the twitching body, chest heaving, and scanned the arena's upper levels. Luxury boxes ringed the pit, each one filled with species he didn't recognize. This wasn't some frontier outpost operation. This was organized, established, and very illegal by any galactic concordat standard. Which meant he was thoroughly fucked. A door ground open across the arena. Two guards, stocky reptilian species with shock prods, entered and dragged the corpse away. They didn't look at Jake, didn't speak to him, just removed the evidence and left. Jake tested his ribs, felt the give of at least one crack. His left eye was swelling shut. The cuts on his arms would need cleaning unless he wanted an infection from whatever that thing's claws had been coated with. The gate sealed. Silence fell over the arena, sudden and complete. Then a different door opened. She entered like smoke given form. Orange skin caught the harsh arena lights, and her vulpine ears tracked forward as she stepped onto the sand. A tail swished behind her, the fur catching the air as she moved. She wore minimal armor, leather straps across her chest and thighs, leaving most of that orange skin exposed. The crowd went absolutely silent. Jake felt his pulse kick up for reasons that had nothing to do with the fight. She was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch, all fluid grace and feral elegance. Then he saw her eyes, amber and cold and utterly empty. She stopped 20 feet away, studied him the way a surgeon studied an incision site. A voice boomed from the speakers, some guttural language Jake didn't know. The crowd responded with a chant, one word over and over: untouchable. 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 Jake's combat instincts screamed a warning. He shifted his weight, raised his hands in a guard position. "I don't suppose we can talk this through," he said. She tilted her head, didn't answer. Her ears flicked back and she moved. Fast. Faster than anything he'd fought today. Jake barely got his forearm up to block the strike aimed at his throat. Her fingers grazed his skin and he jerked back on pure instinct, but she was already spinning away, her tail whipping around to catch his legs. He jumped the sweep and came down throwing a jab. She slipped it, her body bending in ways human spines didn't allow. Her hand snaked toward his face and he ducked, felt the displacement of air as her fingers passed inches from his cheek. They separated, circled. Jake's mind raced. She wasn't trying to grapple, wasn't trying to overpower him. Every strike was aimed at exposed skin, face, neck, wrists, anywhere he wasn't covered. The crowd's chant made sense now. Untouchable. "Don't touch her. What happens if you tad me?" Jake asked, breathing hard. Her eyes flickered, something almost human in them for a moment. Then it was gone. She came at him again. A faint high, real strike low. Jake twisted and her palm slapped against the arena floor where his ankle had been. The stone where she touched turned black. Cracked. A sound like breaking ice filled the air. Jake's blood went cold. One touch. That's all it would take. He changed tactics. Stopped trying to counter. Focused entirely on evasion. She pressed the advantage, driving him back toward the arena wall. Her movements are hypnotic. Predatory. Each strike came within a breath of contact. Jake's heel hit the wall. Nowhere left to go. She closed in, and for the first time, he saw something in her expression. Regret? Resignation? Her hand came up, slow enough he could track it. Slow enough he knew she was giving him time to see it coming. The explosion tore through the arena's eastern wall, the concussive wave threw them both sideways. Jake hit the ground rolling, came up to see smoke and fire billowing from one of the luxury boxes. Structural supports groaned. The crowd panicked, alien bodies surging toward exits. Above him, a section of the upper deck tore free. It fell toward where she lay stunned on the arena floor. Jake's body moved before his brain caught up. 3 running steps and he dove, caught her around the waist, and rolled them both clear as tons of metal and stone crashed down where she'd been. They slid to a stop at the arena's edge, the edge that dropped into the energy containment fields below, blue light that crackled and hummed with enough voltage to vaporize anything that fell into it. The ground beneath them cracked, tilted. She started to slide. Her amber eyes went wide. Her hands scrabbled at the smooth stone, finding no purchase. She tipped backward into open air. Jake lunged. His hand closed around her wrist. Their skin met. The arena froze. Every eye that wasn't running for an exit locked onto them. The chant died. The panic stilled. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. His hand burned where he gripped her, but it was just heat. Just the warmth of another person's skin. Not death. Not the black crack of stone he'd seen her leave in the floor. He hauled her up and back onto solid ground. They collapsed together, his arms still around her, her body pressed against his chest. She stared at him. Her whole body trembled. "How?" she whispered. It was the first word he'd heard her speak. Her voice was rough, like it wasn't used often. Jake didn't have an answer. He looked at his hand, still holding her wrist, then at her face. Up close, he could see the fear in her eyes. Not of him, of herself. Guards poured into the arena, 12 of them, weapons raised. They surrounded Jake and Sarah, but didn't approach within 10 feet. A platform descended from the luxury boxes. Standing on it was something that made Jake's skin crawl, an insectoid, easily 8 feet tall, with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished obsidian. Multiple arms folded across its thorax. Mandibles clicked as it spoke. Fascinating. Scarves said, his voice a wet rasp through his translator. Absolutely fascinating. Jake shifted, trying to put himself between the crime lord and Sarah. She hadn't moved, still staring at where their skin touched. The human survives her touch. Scarvish continued descending from the platform, his multiple eyes fixed on them with an intensity that made Jake's trigger finger itch for a weapon he didn't have. "Do you know how many have tried? How many species have fallen to her in this arena?" "Let us go," Jake said. Scarvish's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "Let you go? My dear human, you've just become the most valuable commodities in 3 sectors." He gestured. The guards moved in. Jake started to rise, but shock prods jabbed into his back. Electricity coursed through him and his muscles locked. He went down hard. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Sarah's face, her hand still in his, and the tear tracking down her orange cheek. Jake woke to the smell of recycled air and ozone. His muscles ached from the shock prod, a deep bone tiredness that made even breathing feel like work. He opened his eyes to find himself in a cell, 10 feet square, reinforced walls that hummed with some kind of energy field. Sarah sat against the opposite wall, knees drawn up, tail wrapped around her body like a shield. Her amber eyes tracked him as he sat up. 2 hours, she said before he could ask. She'd drawn further into herself since the arena. Her ears lay flat against her skull, and she kept her hands tucked against her chest. Jake crossed the cell and sat down next to her, leaving space between them. She tensed. "You can touch me," he said. "I'm fine." "You shouldn't be." "But I am." Sarah's hands tightened on her knees, her claws dug into her own skin. "I was 4 when it started. My mother tried to comfort me after a nightmare. She died in my arms." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Scarvesh's people raided the medical facility where they quarantined me. He saw an opportunity. How many fights? 237. Jake held out his hand, palm up. I could kill you, she whispered. You won't. Slowly, she reached out. Her fingers hovered over his palm, shaking. Her fingertips touched his skin. Sarah made a sound between a gasp and a sob. Her hand flattened against his, palm to palm, fingers threading through his. You're alive, she whispered. She lifted her other hand to his face, traced the line of his jaw with trembling fingers. Tears tracked down her face. Jake turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm. Sarah's breath hitched. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. Her tail unwound and wrapped loosely around his waist. Jake kissed her. She froze for half a heartbeat, then melted into him. Her hand slid into his hair, claws scraping lightly against his scalp. The sensation sent heat straight through him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah pressed her face into the curve of his neck. No one has ever touched me and lived, she whispered. Jake's arms tightened around her. His hand stroked down the length of her spine. We need to get out of here, she said. Jake forced himself to think tactically. Guard rotation, every 4 hours. Energy field deactivates when they pass food through, 3 seconds. The door mechanism clicked. It wasn't time for food delivery. The energy field deactivated. The door slid open. Scarvesh stood in the corridor, flanked by 6 guards. His mandibles clicked. I have wonderful news. The bidding has exceeded my wildest expectations. Jake stood, pulling Sarah up with him. We're not for sale, Jake said. Everything is for sale, human. Scarvesh's multiple eyes fixed on their joined hands. The Galactic Consortium has offered quite a sum to study your immunity. And if we refuse, then I sell you separately. A guard stepped forward, holding a data pad. Images flickered across the screen. A young Vulpine, maybe 14, locked in a cell. Orange fur, ears pressed flat in terror. Sarah made a sound like she'd been gut-punched. Finn, she breathed. Your brother, yes. Scarvesh's mandibles spread wider. Insurance. To ensure your cooperation. He paused. Fight in the championship bout tomorrow. Give the buyers a demonstration. Win, and I'll consider releasing the boy. Refuse, and he dies while you watch. Sarah's whole body trembled. We'll need to think about it, Jake said. You have until morning. Don't bother trying to escape. The boy's cell is rigged with explosives. Any attempt to leave this facility, and he becomes scattered atoms. The door sealed. Sarah collapsed against Jake. He caught her, lowered them both to the floor. She buried her face in his chest, and the sobs came. He has Finn, she said between gasps. Jake held her, one hand stroking her hair. We'll get him out, he said. How? The cell is rigged. Then we disable it. Sarah pulled back. Her eyes were red, but determined. You could escape alone. And leave you here? Leave your brother? Jake shook his head. Not happening. Why? Jake cupped her face in both hands. Because in 6 years... Has anyone else tried to save you? She didn't answer. We're getting out, Jake said. All 3 of us. Sarah kissed him then, fierce and desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt, and he pulled her into his lap, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. Then we need a new plan, she said. The guards wear data pads. If we can get one, the door mechanism clicked again. The energy field dropped. A guard stepped through, carrying a tray, his partner covering him from the corridor. Sarah moved like liquid death. She was across the cell before the first guard could react, her hand catching his throat. He convulsed and dropped. Jake was already moving for the second guard, driving the shock prod into the alien's thorax. They dragged both bodies inside. Jake stripped the first guard of his data pad. 2 minutes, Sarah said. Jake activated the pad. The facility schematic bloomed to life. He found the detention area, 3 levels down, cell 47. There, he said. Her breath caught. Jake kept scrolling. He found the explosive triggers. The detonator was on Scarvesh's person. Biometric lock. We have to get to Scarvesh first. Jake said. Before we go for Finn. Sarah looked at the schematic. He'll be in his private box tomorrow. For the fight. Then that's where we hit him. The alarm blared. Guards flooded the corridor outside their cell. Jake and Sarah pressed against the wall beside the door, bodies coiled. 6, Sarah whispered, her ears tracking the movement outside. Jake hefted the shock prod he'd taken from the guard. The field dropped. The door slid open. They hit the guards like a storm. Sarah's hand found exposed skin, necks, faces, anywhere vulnerable. Aliens dropped, convulsing. Jake used the prod in his fists, driving into joints and soft tissue. 30 seconds and they were through. Detention level, Jake said, already moving. They ran through the facility's underbelly. The corridors here were narrow, dimly lit. This was where Skarvesh kept his prisoners. Sarah moved with predatory grace. They encountered 2 more guards at a checkpoint. Sarah dispatched them both before they could raise an alarm. The detention level stretched before them. Cell 47. Through the transparent door, Jake could see him. Young, maybe 14, with the same orange fur and vulpine features as Sarah. He sat in the corner, ears flat against his skull. Sarah's hand pressed against the door. Finn, she breathed. The boy's head snapped up. His eyes went wide. He scrambled backward until he hit the far wall. No, Finn said, his voice terrified. Stay away. Sarah flinched. Her hand fell from the door. Jake stepped forward, made himself visible. Finn, my name is Jake. I'm here with your sister. We're getting you out. She'll kill me. Skarvish said she kills everyone. She won't. Look. Jake reached back and took Sarah's hand, pulling her forward where Finn could see. Their fingers interlaced. See? I'm touching her. I'm alive. Finn stared at their joined hands. That's not possible. It is, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Finn, it's me. I've been trying to get to you for 6 years. Skarvish said you forgot about me. He lied, Jake said. She's been trapped here, same as you. But we're leaving. All of us. Tonight. He used the access card on the door. It beeped red. Denied. Security override, Sarah said. Cell 47 is flagged. Jake jammed the shock prod into the lock mechanism and triggered maximum discharge. Sparks flew. The door slid open. Finn stood pressed against the far wall. Sarah took a slow step into the cell. She held out her hand. I know you're scared. I know what Skarvesh told you. But I'm your sister, Finn. I promised I'd always protect you. Finn's ears twitched forward slightly. Sarah, he whispered, tears streaming down her face. I remember, Finn said slowly. You sang to me when I had nightmares. Every night. Finn's hand reached out, trembling, toward hers. His fingers brushed against hers. He gasped, but didn't pull back. Sarah's hand closed around his, and she pulled him into her arms. Jake stood watch at the door. We need to move, he said after a moment. Skarvesh will know we're here. An explosion rocked the corridor. The lights flickered. The hangar, Sarah said. Skarvesh is destroying our escape route. Then we go through him. Jake led them back through the corridors at a run. They hit the main atrium and Jake pulled them into cover. Above them, visible through the transparent ceiling, Skarvesh's private box overlooked the arena. Service elevator, Sarah said, pointing. Maintenance access. They moved fast across the atrium. The elevator was unguarded. They stepped inside and Jake hit the button for the luxury level. The elevator whined. I fought there, Sarah said quietly, looking at the arena floor below. Every week for 6 years. Jake's hand found hers. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a corridor of polished stone and expensive art. 6 guards stood between them and the crime lord's box. Stay behind me, Jake told Finn. The guards raised their weapons. Sarah stepped forward, her body language shifting. The warrior Jake had seen in the arena emerged. Her ears laid back flat, her tail lashed. 1 guard fired. The energy bolt seared past her shoulder. She moved. The first guard didn't see her coming. Her hand caught his wrist and he dropped. She used his falling body as a pivot, her legs sweeping out to catch the second guard's knee. She touched his face as he fell. Jake was moving too, the shock prod singing through the air. He caught the third guard in the thorax, drove the prod into the fourth guard's weapon. The rifle exploded. Sarah dispatched the last two with brutal efficiency. They stepped over the bodies and approached Scarvesh's private box. Sarah placed her palm flat against the lock mechanism. The metal began to corrode where she touched it. The lock sparked, smoked, then died. The door swung open. Scarvesh sat in an ornate chair overlooking the arena. He didn't turn. Impressive. I had a feeling you'd make it this far. The detonator, Jake said. Give it to me. Or what? You'll kill me? He held up a small device. A single red button sat in the center. Biometric lock, keyed to my vital signs. The moment my heart stops, the explosives detonate. Sarah's hand tightened on her brother's shoulder. What do you want? She asked. A demonstration. One final fight in the arena. You and the human against my new acquisitions. Win and I'll deactivate the explosives. No more fights, Sarah said. Then Finn dies right now. Scarvesh's finger moved toward the button. Wait, Jake said. Scarvesh paused. One fight, but not in the arena. Here, now, just you and me. Scarvesh's mandibles spread. You think you can defeat me, human? I think I can keep you busy long enough for Sarah to figure out how to disable that detonator. Understanding flickered in Sarah's eyes. She pulled Finn back toward the door. Scarvesh stood, 8 feet of chitinous armor and multiple limbs unfolding. Very well. Let's see what you're made of. Scarvesh moved first. 2 of his forearms lashed out, claws extended. Jake rolled under the strike and came up inside the crime lord's reach. He drove the shock prod into the joint where Scarvesh's lower thorax met his abdomen. The insectoid shrieked. His chitinous plating absorbed most of the charge, but enough got through to make him stumble back. Sarah, the detonator, Jake said, circling. She was already moving, pulling Finn toward the control panel built into the wall. Her fingers flew across the interface, searching for access to Scarvesh's security systems. Scarvesh recovered fast. He charged, using his mass as a weapon. Jake dove aside, but one of those multiple arms caught his shoulder. Claws tore through fabric and skin. Jake hit the floor hard, rolled, came up bleeding. The biometric lock is tied to the facility's main security grid, Sarah called out. I need admin access. Jake feinted left, then went right. The shock prod caught Scarvesh in the joint of his primary arm. The limb spasmed, went limp. Scarvesh swept low with one leg, trying to take Jake's feet out. Jake jumped, but Scarvesh anticipated it. A clawed hand caught Jake midair and slammed him into the reinforced glass overlooking the arena. The impact drove the air from Jake's lungs. Scarvesh pressed his advantage, pinning Jake against the glass with 2 arms while a third pulled back for a killing strike. A metal chair crashed into Scarvesh's head. Finn stood behind the crime lord, holding the remnants of what had been expensive furniture. The boy's eyes were wide but determined. Scarvesh turned on him with a no. Sarah screamed on him with a snarl. She was across the room in 3 strides. Her hand found Scarvesh's face, palm pressed flat against the side of his head. The crime lord convulsed, his grip on Jake releasing. But his exoskeleton was thick, layered. He didn't die. Instead, Scarvesh backhanded Sarah across the room. She hit the wall hard and slid down, dazed. Jake surged forward. He drove his fist into the already damaged joint where Sarah had touched Scarvesh. The kitten cracked. Black ichor leaked out. Scarvesh shrieked. He grabbed Jake with his remaining functional arms and lifted him off his feet. Those mandibles spread wide. You should have taken my offer, human. Jake smiled through the hane. I don't need one. I just need to keep you distracted. Understanding dawned in Scarvesh's multiple eyes. He spun toward where Sarah had been working at the control panel. She stood there, the detonator in her hand. Not the one Scarvesh had been holding. That one lay shattered on the floor. This was the master control, pulled directly from the facility's security grid. Admin access granted, Sarah said softly. Thank you for the biometric authentication. She touched the control panel with the same hand that had touched Scarvesh's face. His ichor on her skin, still fresh enough to register with the biosensors. Scarvesh dropped Jake and lunged for her. Too late. Sarah's finger pressed the deactivation sequence. The device in her hand went dark. Finn's cell is disarmed, she said. Scarvesh froze. His whole body seemed to deflate. You've ruined me, he said. You have nothing, Jake finished. He picked up a piece of the broken chair. Except about 10 seconds to tell us where the hangar is. Scarshaw's mandibles clicked. Lower level, Section 9. The transport is fueled. The codes are in my personal database. Sarah accessed the database, downloaded the hangar codes to the stolen datapad. Finn moved to her side, his hand finding hers. What about him? Finn asked, looking at Scarvish. Jake studied the crime lord. Broken, bleeding, his empire crumbling around him. We leave him, Jake said. Let the authorities deal with him. Let his buyers know he failed to deliver. They'll kill him, Sarah said. Yes. They left him there, slumped in his expensive chair. The door sealed behind them. The facility was chaos. Guards ran in every direction. The explosion had destabilized whole sections. Jake led them through the confusion, following the route he'd memorized. Sarah kept Finn between them, her body a shield. They encountered scattered resistance. A guard here, a security checkpoint there, but nothing coordinated. The hangar appeared through a blast door. Inside sat a sleek transport, smaller than a cargo hauler but built for speed. Jake entered the hangar codes, the transport's boarding ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. Get Finn inside, Jake told Sarah. I'll prep for launch. She hesitated, her eyes searching his face. Once we leave, we're fugitives. We'll be running for a long time. Jake cupped her face in his hands, kissed her, deep and thorough. I've been running my whole life, he said when they parted. At least now I'll be running toward something instead of away. Sarah's tail wrapped around his waist, her forehead pressed to his. Then let's run. They boarded together. Finn collapsed into one of the chairs, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Jake slid into the pilot's seat. He powered up the engines and felt the thrumming vibration through the deck plates. Sarah dropped into the co-pilot's seat beside him. Her hand found his on the control stick. The hangar doors opened. Beyond them, stars wheeled in the void. Jake pushed the throttle forward. The transport lifted, rotated, and shot through the opening into open space. Behind them, the facility grew smaller. Alarms wailed. Pursuit craft launched. 3 fighters, Sarah said, reading the sensors, armed. Can you handle weapons? Yes. Jake threw the transport into a vase of maneuvers. The first fighter opened fire, energy bolts streaking past the canopy. Sarah returned fire, her aim steady despite the violent maneuvering. One fighter exploded in a bright flash. Jake dove toward the gas giant's upper atmosphere. The transport shuddered as it hit the first layers of compressed gases. The pursuing fighters followed, but they were heavier, less maneuverable. Jake threaded through atmospheric storms. Sarah picked off the second fighter as it emerged from a cloud bank. The third broke off pursuit, turning back toward the facility. We're clear, Sarah said. Jake pulled up out of the atmosphere and set a course for the nearest jump point. Behind them, the moon dwindled to a point of light. In the main cabin, Fenn had fallen asleep, curled in the oversized chair. Sarah unbuckled and moved to stand behind Jake's seat. Her hand settled on his shoulders, kneading the tension there. Where are we going? She asked. Human space. Colony worlds on the frontier. Somewhere we can disappear for a while. And then, Jake looked at the readouts showing the jump point approaching. Then we figure out what comes next, together. Sarah's arms wrapped around him from behind. Her chin rested on his shoulder. I've never been free before, she said quietly. Never been able to touch anyone. Never had choices. Jake covered her hands with his. You have them now. The jump point loomed ahead. Jake initialized the FTL drive. "Take us through," Sarah said. Jake's finger hovered over the jump command. He looked back at her, at Finn sleeping peacefully, at the future they'd carved out. He pressed the button. Reality twisted. The stars stretched into lines, then exploded into a tunnel of light. The transport jumped. When they emerged on the other side, Sarah was still holding him. Finn was still sleeping. But for the first time in longer than Jake could remember, he wasn't alone. None of them were. Sarah moved to sit in his lap, straddling his hips. The autopilot handled the ship while she kissed him, slow and deep, her hands threading through his hair. Jake's hands traced the curve of her spine, felt the shift of muscle beneath fur and skin. "Finn's asleep," she whispered against his lips. Her amber eyes held his, pupils dilated with want and need. "I've never," she started. "I know." "Show me." Jake stood, lifting her with him. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her tail twining around him. He carried her to the sleeping quarters, sealed the door behind them. Jake lowered Sarah onto the bunk, the dim quarters casting shadows across her orange skin. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, ears alert but not flattened, nervous, wanting. He knelt beside the bunk, his hand cupping her cheek. "We don't have to," Jake said softly. "I want to." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I've wanted to since you caught my hand in the arena." Jake leaned in and kissed her. Slow, deliberate. Her lips parted and she made a small sound in the back of her throat that sent heat coursing through him. His hand traced down her neck, feeling her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Sarah's hands found the hem of his shirt, pulled it up and over his head, her palms flattened against his chest, exploring. "You're warm," she breathed. "So are you." Jake's fingers found the clasps of her minimal armor. She helped him, shrugging out of the leather straps until they fell away. His breath caught. She was beautiful, all lean muscle and soft fur. He kissed her collarbone, the hollow of her throat, the curve of her shoulder. Each touch drew small gasps from her lips, her tail wrapped around his waist, pulling him closer. "Jake," she whispered. He looked up, met her eyes. "I'm here." She pulled him down onto the bunk beside her. Her leg hooked over his hip, bringing their bodies flush together. The heat between them was electric. Jake's hand traced the length of her spine, feeling the subtle fur there, the warmth of her skin beneath. She arched into the touch, her claws extending just slightly before retracting again. "I won't hurt you," she said. "I know." They moved together in the small bunk, a tangle of limbs and breathless sounds. Jake took his time, mapping every inch of her body with his hands and lips, finding the sensitive spots behind her ears that made her shudder, the base of her tail that drew a gasp. When they finally came together, Sarah's eyes went wide. Her hands fisted in the sheets, claws piercing the fabric. Jake held still, giving her time to adjust. "Okay," he whispered against her neck. "Yes," she breathed. "Don't stop." They found a rhythm together, slow at first, then building. Her tail tightened around him, her legs locked behind his back. The sounds she made were somewhere between whimpers and growls, primal and utterly intoxicating. When she shattered, her whole body went taut. Her claws raked down his back, not hard enough to seriously wound, but enough to leave marks. The sensation pushed Jake over the edge, and he followed her into that bright oblivion. They collapsed together, breathing hard. Sarah's head rested on his chest, her ear pressed over his heart. Her tail remained wrapped around his leg. "That was," she started, then stopped. Her fingers traced idle patterns on his chest. "Yeah," Jake agreed. She tilted her head up to look at him. Her eyes were bright, but there were tears at the corners. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Nothing. Everything. I never thought I could have this." Her voice cracked. Touch. Connection. "Someone who doesn't fear me." Jake pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You have it now. You have me." A soft knock at the door made them both freeze. Finn's voice, tentative, came through. Sarah, are you okay? I heard noises. Sarah's eyes went wide. Jake couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. I'm fine, Finn, Sarah called back. Just talking with Jake. Go back to sleep. Okay. They heard footsteps retreating. Sarah buried her face in Jake's chest, her shoulders shaking with laughter. They lay together until the ship's proximity alarm chimed. New Perth system approaching. Jake reluctantly started pulling his clothes back on. Sarah did the same, though she kept touching him, small brushes of her hand against his arm, his back, like she needed to confirm he was still real. In the main cabin, Finn sat curled in the pilot's seat, watching the stars. He looked up when they emerged. We're almost there? He asked. Almost, Jake confirmed. He slid into the co-pilot's seat and began the deceleration sequence. New Perth? It's not much, but it's safe. Sarah settled behind Jake's seat, her hand resting on his shoulder. Through the canopy, New Perth appeared, a blue-green marble against the black. Jake guided the transport toward the main settlement. The comm system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is New Perth Traffic Control. State your business. Jake keyed the mic. This is the Transport Wanderer requesting landing clearance. Personal visit. A pause. Then a different voice came through, gruff and familiar. Hawthorne? That you? Jake grinned. Hello, Briggs. Been a while. 3 years, you bastard. Landing Bay 7 is open. And Hawthorne? You bring trouble with you? Jake looked at Sarah, at Finn. Nothing I can't handle. Good enough for me. Welcome home. Jake brought the transport down through the atmosphere. The settlement sprawled below them, prefab buildings mixed with more permanent structures, fields of crops, the orderly chaos of humanity building something new. He set them down with practiced ease. This is it? Finn asked. This is it? Jake confirmed. The boarding ramp lowered. Fresh air flooded the transport, real air carrying the scent of growing things and rain. Finn inhaled deeply, his gears perking forward. It smells like home, the boy said quietly. Sarah's eyes glistened. Jake took her hand in his. Then let's go see if we can make it one. They walked down the ramp together. The landing bay was empty except for a single figure leaning against the far wall. Human, older, weathered. Briggs pushed off the wall and walked toward them. His eyes took in Sarah and Finn, lingered on their joined hands, but his expression didn't change. Hawthorne, he said, extending his hand. Jake shook it. Briggs. This is Sarah and her brother Finn. They're with me. I see that. Briggs looked at Sarah directly. Ma'am. Sarah tensed, uncertain. But Briggs simply nodded to her with respect. We don't ask a lot of questions on you, Perth, Briggs continued. Figure everyone's got reasons for being out here. Long as you pull your weight and don't cause trouble, you're welcome. We can do that, Jake said. Good. I've got a place set up. 3 bedrooms and a view of the South Valley. Briggs gestured toward the bay exit. Come on. I'll drive you out there. They followed Briggs to a ground vehicle. Finn pressed his face to the window as they drove, watching the settlement pass by. Humans mixed with a handful of other species, colonists all, building lives in the frontier. The house Briggs brought them to was small but solid, real construction, windows overlooking fields that stretched to distant mountains. A porch. Previous tenants moved on, Briggs explained. Place has been empty for 2 months. It's yours if you want it. Jake looked at Sarah. She stood on the porch, one hand on the railing, staring out at the valley. Finn had already run inside to explore. We'll take it, Jake said. Briggs handed him a key card. Good. Come by the admin building tomorrow. We'll sort out the details. He left them there. Jake found Sarah still on the porch. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Her hands covered his. A home, she whispered. Our home. Finn's voice called from inside, excited. Sarah laughed, the sound bright and free. She turned in Jake's arms and kissed him. Not desperate this time, not urgent, just grateful and hopeful and full of the promise of tomorrow. When they broke apart, She took his hand and led him inside, into the house that would become their home, into the life they'd fought for, into a future where touch meant connection instead of death, where freedom was more than a dream. The door closed behind them. Through the windows, the sun set over New Perth, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. And for the first time in 6 years, Sarah felt safe.